Well, my first memory is when I got there, arriving that night. We flew in about midnight. And I remember as we were leaving the airport, I had my suit on and everything, and it was just so hot. It was April, and I mean, keep in mind it's midnight, but I remember walking out and seeing one of those little scrolling weather, I don't know, what you kind of notice boards, and it was 99 degrees at midnight. And I remember just thinking, this is going to be something else. This is going to be not what I'm used to. So I think that was my very first impression, was just how hot it was in the summer. I remember riding in the taxi back to the mission home, and it's a little bit of a white knuckle experience, your first time in traffic in Delhi especially. Yeah, not, I mean, they're a little liberal with their driving techniques and the rules of the road, but I never saw an accident the whole time I was there, which kind of amazed me with how, you know, it kind of looks like an anthill. It's just going, it's fluid, they're moving, but it works. I remember my first day after I'd met my trainer, as we were walking out, and I was just kind of awestruck, just head in the clouds, looking at everything, trying to get a feel for it. And I remember as we were walking across the street, and I was kind of standing on the edge of this group of missionaries as we were leaving the mission home, and a bus came around the corner real tight and just brushed up against my shoulder. I just remember it startled me, it scared my trainer to death. He thought I was dead. He got this brand new American, and he thought he'd just killed me my first day with him. So that was definitely something to learn early on, is to understand that the bigger they are, the more, that's how you get right of way. The biggest vehicle has the right of way always. So you better watch out. But yeah, those are some of my first memories. Well, the New Delhi mission covers most of India. I want to say it covers about 25 of India's 29 states. It covers Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. As far as missionaries serving there go, it's mostly centralized in New Delhi and Mumbai. I guess it's going to be a stake in about 3 days now, but there's one district in New Delhi with 7 branches, and then another branch in Mumbai and a branch in Kolkata. So that's about the church there. The mission is about 10 years old now. So still fairly new. It's, I mean, India itself, and in New Delhi, it's very strongly Hindu, a very big Hindu majority. And so in the Hindu religion, they believe in many, many different gods. And that's the majority there. You also have Muslims, you have Sikhs, there's Christians, Jews. So there's a lot of religious diversity, especially in Delhi, the city itself. And so with a lot of people, as you talk to them, they're very open about religion, open to discuss religion. Not often we get shut down in just a religious conversation. People are usually very willing to talk about it and to hear your side and to try and understand where you're coming from. I think a lot of it is they just, especially in Hinduism, they're very accepting. Very often they'd say, you know, I'm Hindu, I believe in my gods, and I also believe in your gods. And so, yeah, tell me more about them, and I'll believe. So it's very interesting, kind of that dynamic. Well, something that a lot of people find interesting is the mission there is an English-speaking mission. We teach in English. We find people who speak English and baptize them. And so not everyone in India does speak English, but there is a majority that do. In fact, it's interesting to think that there are more Indians that speak English than there are Americans, just because there's so many more of them. So that was something that was interesting, is we taught in English, we baptized people that spoke English, and that's how the church is run, is all in English. And so if you or I were to go there to visit church on a Sunday, we would understand everything being said in the sacrament meeting, and we'd be right at home. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but that's how it is right now. With the temple, the nearest temple right now is the Hong Kong temple. So members have to make a pretty big sacrifice to be able to travel all the way to there to do their temple work, to be able to be sealed as a family, to have their marriages there. It's a very, very big occasion in the families. And I remember, especially in visiting with members, that was the highlight of their lives, was that one trip they got to make to the temple, or when they got to go with their families and visit. And it's something that they love to talk about, they love to discuss, they love to remember and reflect on that opportunity, because it's not one they get to repeat over and over again. It's one that they had, half a week to be there and to stay and to enjoy the temple while they were there. The church is very good about helping them. If members maybe are in need financially, then the church asks them to save up as best they can for a full year, and then the church will help fill in the rest to make sure they have that opportunity to go. Well, a big thing we started doing is we were teaching English class, because that's something where the Indian people are very driven to learn, to improve themselves, to gain knowledge. And so teaching an English class was a way that we really tried to help the communities, and also tried to find ways to candidly tell people why we were there, that we were there to teach about Jesus Christ. Of course, that was separate from the English class. But that was something we did a lot. One thing that I remember is, especially during the summer months, as we do door knockings or different finding techniques, pretty much everyone will invite you in for a glass of water. Really, you knock on a door, complete strangers, and they'll invite you in to have a drink. And so it was a really easy way to get to know people, to talk with them, to try and start kind of a relationship, just to let them know that you're just a normal person, and you're just here to share a special message. So that was something that was really effective. Not to trick them into letting you in, but just being there and talking to them and asking if you could share a message, as they're being so hospitable and so welcoming. So that's something I definitely continue to take advantage of. It's just being, I don't know, just being a friend to them. They're all willing to talk to you. They're all willing to be your friend. They're all willing to take the time and give you the opportunity to talk with them. So that's something I'd take advantage of if I went back again. Yeah, you have to be a little careful, especially as missionaries there. The ideas of conversion is very frowned upon. It's looked down on. And so kind of the way that you approach different things, you have to be careful with how you go about it. You don't want to go around, asking people to change their religion, because that's something that they have very strong cultural and family ties to their religion. It's passed down from father to mother and son, and through families continuously. Their religion's a huge identifier for them. And so people really don't like the idea of converting to a different religion. And there's been a lot of different issues in the history and the past of India that go along with that. They've kind of built up that stigma. And so that's something that's important to kind of recognize that, but then also recognize that as you teach them, you'll be able to have opportunities to testify to them of the truth. And yeah, you don't have to walk up as you knock on their door and tell them you're here to change their religion or to change their God, but eventually that they'll be open to that idea. But just initially, a lot of people are very closed off about changing their religion. I think another thing as missionaries there is no one knows you. No one knows who you are or what you're doing or why you're there. Most people assume you're students or you're there working and doing something. And so it's very easy to start a conversation that way, explaining who you are and what you're there for. And a lot of people will love to hear that. But a lot of people also, if you come on too strong, will kind of shut down. If Um, I don't know if they get kind of that vibe from you, that you're just there to try and boost your numbers, so to speak. So I served from 2015 to 2017, and I served for 18 months in New Delhi. I guess the other 6 months were split between Rochester, New York, visa waiting, and then also Angeles, Philippines, visa waiting. So kind of a little bit of a mix there, but New Delhi is a massive city. It's huge. I don't even know how many millions they say live there now, but it's one of the largest in the world. So you'll never run out of people passing you on the street, or there's just always people. No matter what time it is or where you're at, there's people. It's interesting that you have kind of the wealthiest people you've ever seen and the poorest people you've ever seen living right next door to each other in the city. You know, these huge houses that are incredible, and next door will be, you know, slums. And so you kind of get to experience all of that blended into one. Some of my favorite things about New Delhi, or I guess just as you're walking down the street, you'll see fruit vendors and vegetable stalls, and just people everywhere selling popsicles or milk out of a bag, or kind of whatever you'd want. There's people out on the streets, and it's busy, and they're out working and selling, and really whatever you want, you can find it. You'll see cows, herds of cows walking down the middle of the street. Cars and traffic kind of flow around it. You just kind of have to deal with them because they have the right of way, always too. As far as transportation goes, you'll see a lot of autos or auto rickshaws, or I guess some people call them tuk-tuks. But they're little three-wheeled vehicles. The driver sits up front, and in the back there's a bench that sits, you know, 3 people comfortably, depending on how big you are. They weren't really built for Americans. So being 6'2", I don't fit real well in them, but you can manage. You'll see a lot of them. They're kind of the main mode of transportation. They're the cheap taxis in India. There's also taxis and buses and even pedal rickshaws, which is similar to an auto rickshaw but without an engine, and the person has a bicycle that he pedals to pull you along. So there's always that there. For work, because it's the capital of India, there's a huge variety, but you'll find a lot of people that work at different call centers, or a lot of different capacities like that, where they're well-educated people who do a lot of stuff like that, working with the U.S. or with the U.K. At a call center. Yeah, there's a lot of old places in Delhi. There's lots of old forts. There's lots of different monuments and ruins that you can visit. There's really no end. I don't think I got to see half of them in the time I was there. But you'll see all those. As an American or as a foreigner, you have to go in expecting that you'll pay a little more. They do charge foreigner tax, but it's usually worth it to go in and see some of these places still. In particular, you have like Red Fort is a very famous one that was basically the capital of the city while the British ruled it. There's Qutub Minar, which is the world's tallest, I think they call it brick, I don't even know the word for it. It's a massive tower. It's huge and it's beautiful. There's lots of different places like that. Lots of different architectural just beauties and wonders. The houses are all pretty much made from concrete. The higher end houses all the way down to the slums, it's all going to be concrete. You know, a lot of the nicer houses, the housing complex, the floors are all going to be marble or polished cement. So no carpets, don't expect to see any carpets. As far as furniture goes, the most important piece of furniture, especially in the poorer homes, is going to be the bed. The bed it's where you sleep, it's where you sit, it's where you eat. It's when we teach lessons, the whole family would be sitting around in a circle on the bed, and it's kind of the central focus of the home, rather than being tucked away in a bedroom. Of course, in the higher end houses, it's normal. It's like you'd expect here. But it's nice, yeah. And in the winters, it gets cold. It can be chilly. If there's a breeze, then it's pretty brisk. Or riding in an open air auto, you'll get pretty cold just with the wind chill. But normally walking on the streets, a short sleeve shirt will do just fine. I don't think it drops much below 50 degrees, to be honest. In the summer, however, it gets very, very, very hot. You know, it's not normal, but it happens pretty regularly. They'll jump all the way up to 115, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or 50 degrees Celsius, where it'll just be blazing hot. And so you'll do whatever you can to stay cool. You'll worry about shade, and in the houses they'll have a lot of ceiling fans, a lot of AC units. But as far as weather goes, you have a really long summer. It starts in about March, and it finishes sometime between September, October-ish, where it's going to be really hot. And during a part of that, you'll have monsoon season with some intense tropical rains and all of that coming through, where it'll cool off a bit. In Delhi in particular, in the winters, the pollution gets pretty bad. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that, but it gets pretty bad in the winters with the pollution. Yeah, so there'll be lots of smaller markets, and there'll also be some huge shopping malls too that you'll find that kind of blow our shopping malls out of the water, just kind of pale in comparison to these really huge shopping malls that they have there. And it's pretty much the same as ours, just bigger and just as nice. But then you also have the smaller markets with lots of small shops that are run by individuals, and all your food, all your fresh vegetables all year round, they'll have all that. As far as the schedule goes, a lot of people, it's kind of a later schedule. The day starts later and it ends a lot later. To kind of give you an idea of that, the average dinner time is probably around 9 o'clock in the evening. 10, 11 is normal to be having dinner really late. And that's kind of just a normal thing with most families. So the day kind of starts off later in the day and you know, ends really late as well, with families, you know, coming together and then cooking and talking and kind of spending the whole evening just kind of relaxed at home with each other, spending a lot of time cooking and eating and enjoying their meal. It's kind of the whole focus once work and school's done. The schools in India are intensely competitive, a lot more than you'd ever see here. A lot of the kids, you don't see them much because they're away to school early in the morning, and then they maybe come home for an hour or two, and then they're back to what they call tuition, which is kind of like a tuition, but it's basically a second class they go back to tutor them in all their classes that they had earlier that day. And it's not mandatory, but it's the vast majority of all students will go to it, just to keep up or to get ahead of their fellow students, because it's very competitive. So lots of schoolwork for kids there. Well, yeah, I am definitely not an expert in Hinduism or in any of the religions, I guess, in India. But being there, yeah, I got a pretty good perspective, I guess, on the people themselves. It always impressed me how devout a lot of the people are, how dedicated they are to their religion, in all the cases. I definitely learned a lot about having who you are be completely shaped by your religion, and by what you believe. I remember especially with Hinduism, just being amazed at I don't know, the depth of their understanding, I guess, with their religion, but also with how understanding they were about other religions. I think that in most cases, as we would share with people, they would always respond with respect and with openness. They would always, be incredibly complimentary when we shared about Jesus Christ. Or even as we taught about Joseph Smith, they would be open to hearing about it and to just, I don't know, being welcoming about it. Even if they didn't believe it and have faith in it themselves, they would always say, that's your beliefs, and I'll respect that. That was something that always really impressed me. As far as things I learned about Hinduism, they have, man, I don't want to get the number wrong, but they say something like 30 lakh gods, which a lakh is 100,000. So 100,000 gods. So I don't know, 30 million gods, 3 million gods. They have a lot. There's a God for everything. And this is with Hinduism especially, they take their festivals so, I shouldn't say seriously, because they have so much fun, but they take their festivals so seriously. When they're celebrating about their religion, when they're celebrating about one of the gods, then it is a citywide thing. It's a massive effort that goes into celebrating these festivals, and they put so much work and time and effort into having these incredible experiences, celebrating a day for one of their gods they believe in, or celebrating just what that God stands for, celebrating victory of light over darkness, or of rebirth and color and newness of life and all that kind of stuff. They really do, I don't know, they really do have a lot of joy when they celebrate those festivals. And that was something I enjoyed being invited to be a part of at times. That's something I enjoyed watching and witnessing, especially with Holi and Diwali, and all kinds of other festivals that they have. In Hinduism, they kind of have the big three as far as gods go of Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva, who are kind of major gods, I guess, so to speak. And they were all involved in the creation and all kinds of stuff like that. So they're very well known and celebrated, as well as their different avatars that they've had and the stories and legends that come with them. Probably one of my favorite stories from Hinduism is probably about Hanuman. And Hanuman's one of their gods, and he, although I don't think he's really worshipped as much as he is honored and respected for his loyalty, because he was loyal to one of the other gods. He basically became a servant for one of them, and and so he's looked up to for that. But I guess part of his story goes that this god who he looked up to, Ram, or the incarnation of one of the gods, if I remember correctly, he became sick. He was dying, and there was a flower that was needed to save his life. And Hanuman, being the courageous, loyal follower that he was, decided that he would do whatever it takes to find that flower to save his life. So as the story goes, Hanuman had all these incredible powers of super strength and being able to fly and all these things, but he didn't know about them. He hadn't learned that he had those powers yet. And so it took this quest that he had to save Ram to figure out all the abilities, all the things he could do. It talks about him flying over, this huge ocean and defeating a sea monster, and doing everything he could to find the place where the flower was. And when he came to the mountain where the flower was, he searched and searched and couldn't find it. And so what he ended up doing is he could grow or shrink himself. And so he grew to an incredible size and lifted the mountain up in one hand, and he flew with the mountain all the way back across the ocean in order to be able to find the flower and give it to Ram once he was there. So that was one of my favorite stories. I don't know how accurately I rendered it, but I loved that story. That was one of my favorites. Just his devotion and his willingness to do whatever it takes to serve the God he loved. Well, Hindi is one of the most widely spoken languages in the world. A lot of that's because it's one of the main languages in India. All right, well, let's see. As far as how it sounds, like another common phrase would be "aap kaise ho," which means "how are you?" "Aap kaise ho." I guess to kind of get a feel for it, like "Mera naam Elder Parker hai, aapka naam kya hai? Aap kya kahan se rehta hoon?" It's a lot of I don't know. It's very easy to learn in a way because the way it's written is the way it sounds. There's no silent E's. There's no PH makes a F sound. It's the way it's written, the way you read it is the way it comes out. I don't know. I have a hard time thinking of this on the spot. Like what's a normal thing that most people say? It's usually about that. "Aap kaise ho?" "Main theek hoon." Yeah, so just in greeting someone, you'd say "Aap kaise ho?" "Main theek hoon." हम चर्च से और हम एक मैसेज शेयर करता हूँ यीशु मसीह के बारे में. आप और आपके दोस्त, आपके परिवार कोई interest है? And so just an invitation to share a message about Jesus Christ. There's often kind of English words mixed in. Another thing we'd commonly say is "Hum swayam sevar karta hoon," which means we do service. We're here to serve. So, I mean, I didn't learn a lot of church lingo, so to speak, because we did teach in English. Most of what I learned was dealing with auto drivers. There's a lot of bartering that goes on. Lots of arguing about the price to pay for how far you're going to go and a lot of different things. So a lot of the Hindi I learned was mostly to deal with auto drivers. A lot of numbers, knowing what price they're saying, knowing how to counter with my own price. Things like telling them to move on or to go to the next guy or different things like that is a lot of what I learned. So, I don't know, simple things like jao. It just means like leave. Like if you're not making a deal, if it's not working, then jao, and you go on to the next auto. With auto drivers, I don't know. A lot of it is basically just saying like 30 rupees. It's 30 rupees. That's all I'll pay. That's the form of money is rupees. And so things like that. That's a lot of what I learned was just how to barter with them. Which kind of, I don't know. I guess you could say I didn't really learn academic Hindi as much as I learned the street slang Hindi in order to do that. So yeah, Hindi's one of the oldest languages in the world. From India, it's Sanskrit, and so Hindi is another language that Sanskrit is the base of Hindi. Most Indian languages are based off of Sanskrit, and so Hindi is said to be the one that's the most closely related to how Sanskrit was. But it originated in India. Most Indians speak it. It's one of the official languages in India. So it's really widely spoken there. Oh, I did not understand how much of a treat I was in for with Indian food. In a few words, it was amazing. It was spicy. It was hot. Oh, I loved it. You know, you have your classics. You have your butter chicken. You have your dal makhani. You know, a lot of it's chicken. You're gonna get chicken curries and chicken fry. Most of it's, you know, with the chicken curry, it's basically just a gravy you put over rice that's made with onions, tomatoes, seasoning. You basically just blend it all up and cook it until it's all stewed together into a gravy, and yeah. Up north, it's pretty common to eat it with bread. They'll make their naan, their rotis, their chapatis, parotas, a huge variety of different breads that they'll eat these curries with, or man, I could go on all day. They have their sabji, which it means vegetable in Hindi, but it's basically these. It's basically stewed vegetables that they've seasoned and put together, and that's something you'll eat a lot. Man, there's so much variety. One of my favorites was pani puri, which it's basically it's a hollow ball, a little shell, and what they do is they'll take that ball and they'll punch a hole in it, and they'll fill it with potato, onions, different ingredients depending on where you go, and then they'll usually put in a hot sauce, a hot red chili sauce, and a cooler kind of creamy sauce. I don't know how to describe it. They'll put those into it in just smaller amounts, and then they'll take it and dip it into water that's been seasoned, masala water. It'll usually be a greenish color based on the seasoning, and they'll fill up the ball the rest of the way to the top with this water. And you basically just pop it in your mouth and put it all down in one go, and it's so good. It's crunchy from the ball, and then you just get this burst of seasoning, of just spice and flavor, and it burns the back of your throat a little bit, and makes your eyes water, your nose run a little bit the first time you have it. But it's so good. That was one of my favorites. And it's cold. The water itself will be kind of cold, so it adds an interesting dimension to it. Man, what else? Oh, there's so much. Rajma. Rajma is basically like our chili. Like we have a chili con carne, beans and beef chili. Then they have a rajma without the beef, because there's no beef. If you're going to Delhi, there's no beef. Just forget about it when you get on the plane, and don't worry about it till you get home. But it'll just be this bean chili that you'll eat, and it's good. The seasonings are so rich and complex and overpowering in everything you eat. All right, one of my favorites, it's called an anda paratha, which is egg paratha. Now, paratha is a bread they make that's about the size of a dinner plate, maybe a little bit bigger. And they cook it on these massive flat skillets with oil. And as they roll it out, as they're rolling out the dough, they'll mix different things into the dough as they're actually rolling it out. You'll have cumin and cilantro and maybe like some paneer, which is kind of like a cheese that they'll mix into the dough as they roll it out. So the bread itself has the seasonings in it. And then what they'll do with the anda paratha is, as they're cooking it, as the bread's getting fully cooked, they'll actually kind of slice it open as it puffs up a little bit, and they'll pour, for lack of a better word, just eggs into it that they've scrambled. And then they cook the eggs inside of the bread, and it kind of fills out through the whole bread. And so you'll have this round bread about the size of the dinner plate, about half-inch thick, that's just full of eggs and seasoning. And then you take that and you eat it with a curry. Again, you don't even just eat that plain. You're dipping it in a curry and in sauces, and you're eating that with a chutney, which is kind of like an Indian salsa, that you'll eat it with. That's one of my favorites. What else? Momos. You can't miss momos. They're like a dumpling, basically. It's a little steamed dumpling that's either full of chicken or vegetables or a little bit of both. And you can get them steamed, or you can get them deep fried in oil. It depends on where you go to get them. There'll be momo stands everywhere throughout the city. So you can try a couple and get your favorite, whichever one. But the momos are served with a side of chili sauce, which I don't know what they put into it, but it tastes like they just blended the chilies straight in. Just red chilies, and it's hot. Just the straight chili sauce is really, really hot. And so they also serve it with another side of, they call it mayonnaise. It looks a little bit like Elmer's glue at first. It's not like real mayonnaise, but that's what they call it. And it's basically just a cream sauce to help cool down the chili as you dip it. And so those are really good. Those are one of my first loves too, as far as Indian cuisine. And they call that Chinese food. I don't know if it actually came from China or Nepal or where it came from, but that's everywhere. So yeah, there's a lot to choose from. There's a lot to choose from in India. Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest thing, especially for elders, but probably for anyone traveling to India, you want your shoes to be pretty easy to take on or take off and put on. Whenever you go into someone's house, whenever you go to a temple per se to visit some historical structures, you're going to remove your shoes. It's just a common thing there. So especially for missionaries, every lesson you're walking in, you're taking your shoes off, you're putting them back on after. So just make sure they're easy to take on and off. I know when I went, sandals were totally acceptable as long as they were nice leather sandals. I mean, I don't want to say that as though it were law, because you have to judge off of your own packet, but that was something that I brought with me that was a lifesaver, especially for that reason. Because otherwise you're just going to be skinning your knuckles trying to slip your heel on and off every day. As far as health goes, especially for your first few days, depending on how long you'll be there, or your first few months, be very cautious about where you eat from or what you eat. There are so many places that are so good, and also so many places that are delicious, but probably require a acclimated stomach for that's probably a good term. It takes an acclimated stomach to enjoy certain dishes. So I'd say take your time, for sure. Be cautious, especially with what you choose to eat and where you choose to eat. But yeah, I mean, go heavy on spices. Enjoy it. I mean, a little bit eyes watering, it's worth it. It's worth it. Don't hold back on that regard. Just don't eat momos from the street stand next to the pack of street dogs the first day. Leave that for month 6 or 7. A surprise later on. What else as far as safety? When you cross the street, you got to cross the street confidently. You can't be timid in crossing the street. Of course, you look both ways. And of course, you don't want to walk into oncoming traffic. But every now and then, and I don't know if this is good advice or not, but it's what I did and it worked. You just got to go. You got to set a speed for yourself and you got to start walking. And traffic will flow around you. It sounds kind of scary and kind of terrible, but that's how it works, honestly, most of the time. You just kind of got to go and they'll see you, hopefully, and they'll move. Unless it's a bus. This does not ever apply to buses, ever. This is for motorcycles and autos and small vehicles only. But yeah, be careful with traffic for sure. When I lived in an apartment that had 6 elders and we were moving our apartment, we were shifting apartments. And so I remember we spent all day, one day, just loading up all our furniture and everything into this truck and then riding in the truck over to our new apartment and unloading it. And it took all day. And I mean, for us, while we were there, most of the apartments don't have the cleanest drinking water, so we'd have a nice purifying system that would take the tap water and run it through all kinds of stuff. And so while we were moving, we had unhooked our water purifier, and when we got to the new apartment, we hadn't hooked it up yet. And so we'd spent all day moving all this furniture. It was in the summer, so it was over 100 degrees outside. I just remember we got to the point where we were just tired, and we were done for the day, ready to just take a break. And I remember we all went up to our new apartment and we didn't have the water filter hooked in yet. And so we just thought, oh, once won't hurt. It'll be fine. And so I remember all 6 of us just drank straight out of the tap. And I think it was that same day that 4 of the 6 of us were all just sick. I don't even think it took the next day. I think by the end of that day we were sick. Yeah, that ended up lasting like a week. So that was one experience with moving and with drinking tap water there. The other one I remember, we were helping a member move, and she hadn't been to church in probably 7 years. And the only reason we'd found her is because she was trying to find someone to help her move, and the elders, of course, are always willing and ready. And so she'd gotten a hold of us, and we went out to her house, and we'd loaded up all her belongings into this truck, and we'd jumped in the back of the truck as we drove over to her new apartment. And just after helping her move everything out and move everything in, I remember she was just so thankful for everything we did. And she kind of started to open up to us a little bit and tell us about kind of what had been going on in her life, why she had to move. And she told us some of the experience she's had. Her husband had disappeared like a year earlier. She had no idea what had happened to him. She had 3 children. She had 2 sons and a daughter. And one of her sons had some pretty severe some pretty severe mental issues. I don't know exactly what he had, but he lived at home, and he had one of the girls next door, one of the neighbor girls, would come over and help take care of him. His name was Sunny. And then her daughter had just recently eloped, had ran off and gotten married, and she was having a lot of issues also with her new marriage. Her other son had gotten into a lot of trouble with drugs and other things, and so she just had a lot of challenging things that were all kind of coming to a head all at the same time. And she kind of just opened up to us and talked to us a lot about it, about everything that happened. And I just remember the opportunity I had to have a lesson with her there, and just you could feel the difference in her as we started talking and teaching and prayed with her, and just that opportunity we had to share a message about Jesus Christ and how everything was going to be okay. And I just remember just the feeling we had being in her home before and after as we'd moved her in, and kind of just the feeling that she told us that it felt like she had a home now, and lots of good stuff. She ended up coming back to church and really diving right in. Her and her son Sonny would come every week, and there wasn't a happier person on earth than Sonny, that's for sure. But that's another good memory I have. There was once during a monsoon where it had just been raining and just pouring rain. And it had been coming down in sheets for a couple hours, and it had gotten to the point where the drainage system, the sewers, just couldn't handle that much water anymore, and so it kind of slowly crept up, and it was about to my knee. It was about knee height. And I remember me and my companion were just wading through this water to an appointment, and it was a home we'd never been to before. And we were just kind of finding our way there, asking people as we went how to get there, because there aren't really addresses in India for the most part. And so as we were kind of working our way towards this house, walking through this water, there were all kinds of other people walking through with us, and there were cars driving through it. I remember there was this one car that was kind of stuck in an intersection. So me and my companion thought, service, let's go help them push their car out. And I remember as we started pushing this car, dozens of people started yelling at us, just yelling. And it was all in Hindi. They're all yelling at us in Hindi, and me and my companion were both American at the time. And of course I was American. My companion also was American. And I just remember just looking around confused at why all these people were yelling at us for helping. And I remember as I turned to look around at these people, I saw my companion drop suddenly. I just remember reaching down and grabbing him under the armpits. And what happened is when the storms kind of get that big and when the water floods that much, the storm drains come off the manholes. And so all those people had known that there was a manhole there, and they were yelling at us to watch out. And what had happened to my companion is we were pushing this car, he had stepped right into the manhole and just sank right up to his armpits in the water. That was another wild one. That was a scary experience, because I remember grabbing him under the armpits, and he had actually grabbed onto the door handle of the car that we were pushing as he was falling in. He grabbed onto the door handle and actually ripped the door handle off. It came right off the car. But we were lucky. We were lucky he didn't go any deeper, because if he'd gone all the way into that manhole, then that could have been bad. So that was a scary one, but that was one that we laughed about for a long time after that, just because that water isn't clear. Once the sewers are overfilled, that water is not clear. It's not blue. It's somewhere between brown and black. And you can guess why, but that was a good laugh. I don't know how far to go with this one, but I guess you can edit it out later. But in India, they have what they call he-shis. And he, she's, I mean, the name kind of gives a hint to it, but they're how to say this in a politically correct way. They're transgender beggars, so to speak. They're out on the streets. They're usually men that dress up as women, and they go from vehicle to vehicle begging for money. And as Indian lore or superstition has it, they were cursed or they were born that way. They're in an unfortunate circumstance, so giving them money gives you good luck or good karma. And so it's a good thing to give them money to help them out, which is true of all beggars, basically. I mean, helping them out is always a good thing. But so these he-she's, basically the opposite end of that superstition is that if you don't give them money, they can curse you. And their curses take a lot of different forms. But there was one time there were 4 of us elders riding in the back of an auto. And they're open air autos, like the doors, there aren't doors on them, and you just kind of slide into the bench and you all sit down. So we're at a stoplight and we're sitting there waiting to go through, and we see a he-she coming through the cars, and they're easy to pick out because they'll walk around clapping like this, which becomes really creepy after you've seen it a few times. But they'll walk around like that, and so you see them coming. And I remember one of the Indian elders saying, just pretend you're asleep. Like, just pretend you're asleep, they'll leave you alone. And so it was one Indian elder and 3 Americans all sitting in this auto. And so all of us kind of lay back and pretend we're asleep. All of us at the exact same time. And she makes a beeline for us, or she makes a beeline for us, coming right at us. And gets to the opening of the auto, and she's clapping, looking right at us and just waiting for us. And we're all like kind of squinting through our eyes, like no one wants to be the first one to make a move. No one wants to be the one that gets singled out by this he-she. And it sits there for a second just kind of looking at us. And then it kind of starts to lean into the auto, and all of us tense up and lean back except for one elder. And he was going for an Oscar. He wanted to get the Academy Award. He was full on acting that he was out. Eyes closed, no flinching, no nothing. And this he-she leans right in and just plants one right on his mouth. And oh man, I thought the auto was going to tip over. We were laughing so hard. I mean, you can't imagine how funny that was. That this he-she just kissed this elder right on the mouth. Oh man, I mean, we all felt bad for him, but that didn't stop us from telling everyone that we could about this story. Oh, that was funny. That was an unfortunate occasion for that elder, probably against mission rules, but oh man, that was hopefully a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'll say that much. But it was worth it once, since it wasn't me. Yeah, you have to be careful with he-she's. You have to be very diplomatic in dealing with them, especially as missionaries. But yeah, pretending to be asleep is not the right route. I will tell you that right now. Don't pretend to be asleep. Just take it head on and deal with it like a man, and it'll turn out better than that, I can promise. Well, yeah, like I said, there's always cows walking down the streets. You'll always see that. I remember on occasion, one of them was just being mean. It was a big old bull, and it was not happy. I remember as we walked towards it, kind of getting a little bit of anxiety of like, all right, like, you know, it's like rule number 1, you don't mess with the cows in India. You just don't. And so like walking towards it and kind of seeing how everyone was nervous around it. Usually seeing a dog in India, or seeing a cow in India, it's like seeing a dog here in the U.S. It's like seeing a dog on a leash here in the U.S. They're as docile as they come, just domesticated. And you just kind of ignore them. You could brush shoulders with them and you wouldn't, it's normal. But on this occasion, I remember this bull was just not having it. And he was running at people, and he'd stop a couple feet away, And it seemed like he was just doing it just to see him jump almost. I don't know. I don't know what it was or what was going on. But as me and my companion were walking kind of towards this bull, it just locked eyes with us, and it was coming for us. And I remember telling my companion, don't run, it'll chase you. Like, just don't run. Like, stand your ground. And I remember him saying, Elder, that works for dogs, not now. Like, let's run. And in the split second between when it started coming and I was about to grab my companion and say stay, he had already taken off. He was gone. So there's no way I was sticking around. So, yep, I remember running from a bull. It felt like I was in Spain doing the running of the bulls. Was it the Pamplona or whatever? But that was one that got my heart racing pretty good. I don't think I'd ever have that happen walking down the street, University Avenue, but that was about what it was. It wasn't a small street, and it wasn't one that was lacking for people. So I'm sure there were plenty of people that got a good laugh out of the big white boy running away from that bull. That was funny. When they celebrate Holi, Holi's the festival of colors. It's kind of the springtime festival, rebirth. And it's celebrated. There's lots of colored chalks or dyed water that they'll put in water balloons or squirt guns. And basically it's just a celebration of throwing these colors at each other. The color festival. And everyone dresses usually all in white, and you play Holi. You just go out and you throw colors at each other. And that's the festival. That's the celebration. And so I remember as a missionary on the day of Holi, you just know you're going to get it. I mean, you're walking around outside in a white shirt and tie, and you know it's coming. And there's usually like these 4 or 5-story buildings all around you, and you're watching out, you're keeping an eye out. Even a couple days before the official day of Holi, you got to keep your eyes open because people are practicing with their water balloons. They're getting ready. They're dialing in their aim. So you'll get full-on pink chalk just dusted one day, like 3 days before Holi. So you gotta keep an eye out. So as a missionary there, especially, I think I went through 7 shirts that day, just because you'd be on your way to an appointment, and on the way there, you'd get powdered and dusted, and then a water balloon, and all that chalk is now wet, and it just stains your shirt. But everyone's having a good time, and you're enjoying it. And then you get to your appointment, you have a nice appointment, and then let's say you go home for lunch, you change out your shirt, you get a new nice fresh shirt on, and you think, surely they can't be celebrating still. Like, everyone has to be done by now. I mean, it's well into the afternoon, and it's not 5 seconds out the door, and I get hit by another dyed water balloon, and you just have purple spots all down your back, and that was a fun one. That's a fun one as missionaries to enjoy and really just get into the celebration of it, really enjoy the culture and have a good time with it. Yeah, while I was there, I definitely had a solid Indian accent. I don't know if I can conjure it up on the spot. Every time people ask me to, it comes out pretty terrible. It sounds really, really bad when I try and force it. But there's definitely kind of a different canter to the way they speak. I don't know if I can even imitate it right now, but I don't know, the best way to describe it, it's very simplified, and it's kind of, everyone, whether they speak English or not, you'll hear them, as you walk down the street, you'll hear the children say, "How are you? I'm fine." But it's one phrase. They don't ask it as a question. It's, "How are you? I'm fine." How are you? I'm fine. Or, "My name is," and they'll say their name. "What's yours?" Just like these little phrases that they've learned in school, and everyone knows it. So you'll hear a lot of that. I mean, yeah, traditional greeting in India is namaste. You'll hear that a lot. Namaste, how are you? Where are you from? Why are you here? There's kind of a lot of, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a lot of this kind of I don't know, kind of halting way of speaking, but I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to do. If I'm talking on the phone to one of my friends back in India, then it comes naturally. It'll just come. I don't have to think about it. It's just there. But normally, if I try and do it on my own, it's kind of ugly. Like you can see, it's not very good if I try and force it. But I don't know how to describe it. If you watch a Bollywood movie, you'll get a really good idea. You'll get a really good idea of how they speak, especially their English, their Hindi. Even when they're speaking in Hindi, there's a lot of English thrown in. And when they're speaking in English, every once in a while there's a Hindi word or two thrown in. So there's a lot of blending that goes on. As far as English accents, I don't know if there's a lot of different ones. There's different languages. Every state has their own language, and so that kind of carries its own accent with it. And then depending on the area, where I was at, it was very Hindi strong, but you'll find areas, especially in Delhi, where it's lots of Tamil or Telugu. Those are kind of the big three languages that are spoken, other than English, is Hindi, Tamil, and Telugu, and each of them has their own styles, their own way of speaking English. They all have their own English accent, I guess. So yeah, I had the opportunity to serve with a lot of different elders whose mother tongue was Tamil or Telugu, whether they were from Hyderabad or Bangalore or some other southern India city or state. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of different accents, but I don't know how well I could describe them to you. I guess this one could happen in Provo too, but I remember one of my companions was terrified of dogs, and there's a lot of street dogs in India. You'll see them everywhere, and most of them are just nice. I'm a big fan of dogs, so I didn't have any issue. They'd trot right up to you, you'd pat them on the head, and they go their way. You don't have to worry about them. But I remember there's this one street dog in particular that just didn't like us, and this street dog slept right in the middle of the path that we walked past to get home every single day as we were walking to our apartment, and he would just sleep right in the middle of the path. He'd always be asleep, and so I remember my companion, who was terrified of dogs, would always inch his way up against the wall all the way around this dog to get past it. I remember one day, I think I was just in a good mood. We probably had a couple new investigators or something. I was just feeling good. So I remember as we were walking down this pathway past this dog, I just took off running and I jumped straight over the dog instead of walking around it. And as I landed, I remember hearing it barking. And at the same instance it barked, I heard my companion scream. And I just remember I started laughing, and I was laughing. The dog was barking. My companion's yelling. And once one street dog starts barking, they all start barking, and there were probably 5 or 6 street dogs that all just converged chasing after me. And I was just having a good time, and I think my companion thought I was dead. I think he left me for dead, that's for sure. He wasn't coming after me. But that was all right. That was pretty fun. It turned out all right. Eventually I stopped running, and the dogs caught up to me. And I patted a few of them on the head, petted them, and it was totally normal. It was just like a normal day. But that was a lot of fun. That's a good memory too. Well, Christmas is celebrated in India. It's not the big holiday though. It kind of takes a back seat to Diwali or Holi or any of the other big major Hindu festivals. But as a missionary living there and serving there in India, I remember just with our apartment mates. There were 6 of us in the apartment, and I just remember we all decided about a week before we were gonna do something, whatever it was. We were gonna get gifts for each other. I just remember waking up that morning, and one elder for his gift had bought a box of cereal, and he'd pre-poured it into all the bowls, and he'd put milk in all the bowls also, as a Christmas morning treat for the elders. But he'd gotten so excited he did it at about 5:45, and most of us woke up at 6:30. So it was a little soggy by the time we got around to it, but it's the thought that counts. That was a native elder, yes. I don't think he didn't like cereal, so he'd never bought it before, but he knew the Americans loved their cereal, and they loved it with milk. So it was a very kind gesture. Luckily, one of the other elders also decided to make breakfast as his Christmas gift, and his was he found wheat toast and jam, and so we had some soggy cocoa roux, I think they were, and some wheat toast with jam for our Christmas morning breakfast, and it was great. It was really good. Yeah, it was a good Christmas. It was a good Christmas. It just went uphill from there, as you can imagine. I can't imagine having served anywhere else but where I did. The people in India are absolutely incredible. I never knew so many good people could exist in one place on earth. You'll never have to worry about people being welcoming. You'll never have to worry about hospitality or whether or not someone's going to be kind to you, because they will. For me, serving in India, I learned a lot about what it means to love your brother, and who your brother is. I learned a lot about what it means to just share everything. What's yours is mine, and my good fortune is your good fortune. I learned a lot from the people of India when it comes to just that goodness that they have. As a missionary there, it's going to be challenging, that's for sure, at times. It's going to be hard. I think every mission is. But I think one of the greatest things to learn from a mission is that every time you get knocked down, every time you have to fall to your knees in whatever situation it may be, that you'll be able to stand up again, and you'll be able to stand up a little bit taller than you did before. You'll be able to do a little more. And I know that this church is true. I know that having a testimony of the church is essential. I know there are so many people that are waiting for what you have to say, and the things that you know and the things that you can do to bless them, to lift them, and to strengthen them that need it. And I'd say be good to your companion as the last word. Because you're there just as much to bless and help and strengthen them as you are the people that you're there to serve. So just want to share that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.